to 7 p.m. just before Let's Talk with WMPR's own owner, host Mr. James Charles Edwards, exclusively on 90.1 FM.
That's what I We shall overcome. Go check for Mr. Nelson outside. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Reviving Mississippi Show. I'm your host, Keith Stamps. We got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to talk about a lot of the pressing issues that are facing the city right now. We're going to have the CEO of the airport, Mr. Carl Newman, will be coming on the show very shortly. We'll be talking about the city council meeting from just yesterday. A lot of things went on yesterday during the council meeting. It was kind of long, about 3.5 hours or so. But we got a lot of good work done, a lot of good points were aired, and we got a long ways to go when it comes to getting some problems solved. One of the more inflammatory issues that came out was a discussion item about the airport yesterday. We've been working on this issue. It's not something new that the state of Mississippi has been making overtures to take the airport or try to get some representation on the airport board or try to garner some resources there. So we've been working through these issues for a long time. So it's not like a new conversation for us. So I want to welcome to the show Mr. Carl Nelson. How you doing, Mr. Nelson?
Newman, sir.
Newman, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Karen.
Nelson's my cousin.
Mr. Newman, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing quite well, Councilman. Thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to come and share with the people some of the truth about the airport.
There's a lot of great things going on at the airport, and before I dive into some of that, I thought what I would do first and foremost is
talk a little about yourself.
What I want to thank you.
Okay.
I want to thank you and the rest of the council members here with the City of Jackson, whom have been nothing but outstanding and welcoming to me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
In just a few days, I will have been here a year,
mm-hmm.
and so we're looking at our 1-year anniversary, and everybody here has just been absolutely wonderful and great. So, thank you first and foremost.
Oh, I appreciate that. Since this is the first time you're on our show, and for any of the listening audience who doesn't know Mr. Newman, he's a wonderful man, got a wonderful wife, great family, and they've come here to Mississippi to lend their talents and skills from a lifetime of expertise in the airport industry. So talk a little bit about your background so people can know a little bit about your background in running and managing airports.
I will do that, but it sounds to me like you just called me old. That experience quote there. So, I come to the industry with, my goodness, almost 37 years of
mm-hmm.
experience and background in this business. I spent 34 years with the City of Phoenix,
okay.
the City of Phoenix Aviation Department. I started with the department, believe it or not, as an airport security guard.
Mm-hmm.
When I left there, I was the COO for that organization.
So you know airport from the bottom all the way to the top.
From the bottom to the top, and I can't say that I've done every job
mm-hmm.
in an airport system, but I've done a good many of them. There aren't many that I have not had a chance to do over time. Mm-hmm. One of which, though, is the job that Jean Frazier does for us, which is acting as our PIO, and so
mm-hmm.
she does a great job of keeping me on the straight and narrow, and we are very pleased and happy to have Jean on board with us.
Oh, Ms. Frazier is a wonderful Ward 4, hard-working lady who'll keep you in line and keep you on track for the things you need to do, what you need to say. You're going to show up. You're going to have your briefing sheet there. You're going to have your material. When she was at Jackson State, she operated in the same manner. So I do appreciate her and the hard work she puts in place, her and her husband.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about after you left Phoenix, where'd you go next?
After I left Phoenix in 2012
Mhm.
and went over to Bush Intercontinental Airport,
Mm-hmm.
where I was the general manager for Bush Intercontinental there for almost 3 years.
Okay.
And man, that's a big old place.
It is.
It's a big old monster. Both airports, are really, really, really busy airports. Both of them do about 40 million passengers a year.
Okay.
A few more than we do here in Jackson.
Just a few.
So, big old busy places. There are probably 50 miles of drainage ditch
Mm-hmm.
alone, on the Bush Intercontinental Airport, a place that had 5 runways, 5 different terminal buildings, 2 trains, and we had a good time there. And was not, too comfortable, with the city of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we had an opportunity to come to Jackson and this community, which is wonderful, we took the opportunity to do so.
So you mean to tell me that you left from managing the airport, the Houston airport, to come to the city of Jackson because you saw more opportunity? Talk a little bit about the difference in the opportunity that you were in and the opportunity that you came to.
Well, this airport business is my career,
Mhm.
right? And so I mentioned to you that when I left Phoenix, I was the chief operating officer for Phoenix. So
Mhm.
that's the number 2 person.
Mhm.
I was the general manager for Bush Intercontinental, but I was not, the director of that airport system.
Mhm.
The opportunity here was one where I had a chance to be in essence, the director,
Mhm.
the CEO for the organization,
Correct.
and have a chance, to oversee multiple airports. And I thought, that was a good fit for me and my skills.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really appreciate about being, here in Jackson is the opportunity again, to really work closely with policymakers such as yourself,
Mhm.
policymakers, in some of the surrounding cities as well. But really an opportunity to work from a policy standpoint with our current, with the board of commissioners.
Okay.
And so that has also been a wonderful situation. Board of Commissioners have been nothing, short of phenomenal. Very, very supportive of the things that we're trying to accomplish, at the airport,
Mhm.
and it's been a great situation. So I knew it was going to be a great fit right from the beginning.
Well, great. A lot of people they just kind of go to the airport and they go where they go and they come back and they just see that piece, right?
Right.
And call us for those who are just tuning in. We have Mr. Carl Newman. He's the CEO of the Jackson Medgar Wiley Evans Airport. And so talk a little bit about the airport as an asset. Like, what's the value of the airport and the financial situation of the airport system? Because it's it's a system. It's not just one single airport. It's a system of airport operations. So give people a little scope of the airport. What does it economically stand for?
So the Jackson airport system,
Mm-hmm.
has to be one of the major economic drivers for this community. In fact, we believe, that studies that have been conducted will indicate that our airports, contribute almost $900 million a year in value to the state's economy.
So I want to elevate this conversation from a black-white conversation or a Democrat-Republican conversation
Yes, sir.
to an asset value conversation. This is an asset that one level of government is looking at trying to acquire from another level of government.
Yes, sir.
And
That's happening right now.
if we degenerate to a black-white conversation or a Democrat-Republican conversation, that takes us in a different direction. And if we elevate that this is an asset that is in a great financial situation. So talk a little. You talked about the airport contributes almost $900 million a year to the state's total economy.
Yes, sir.
And one of the biggest drivers economically of the entire state of Mississippi.
Absolutely.
So
I
go
would say
deeper into that.
I would say it's probably, within the top 5 economic drivers, for the state of Mississippi. I can't think of many,
Mm-hmm.
that would do more, in terms of economic activity. And so our airports serve more than 1 million passengers a year.
Mm-hmm.
1 million passengers, come through in and out those doors, each and every year. we handle almost 19 million pounds of freight, which is quite a bit of freight. We are the home of 2 military operations,
Okay.
which is something that is very, very important to the state and certainly to the region.
Right.
So the 172nd, I believe, operates out of Jackson, Megawati, Everson National Airport,
Mm-hmm.
and the 185th Army Air National Guard operates out of Hawkins Field.
Okay.
So in terms of operations, our places are pretty busy. More than 30,000 of the 58,000 aircraft operations that take place every year at our airport are operations that occur with and through the military. So a great deal of activity there is associated with it, and I would say that if our airports weren't there, the military would have a little bit difficult time conducting its missions, which are important, to the nation. So very, very important from that standpoint.
Okay. So talk a little about about how Jackson, Megawati Evers International Airport and Hawkins Field work together as a system, because it's a package deal. I don't believe they could work independent of each other.
They could, but it would be difficult.
Okay.
And difficult, from this sense. And so we look at Hawkins Field as being a reliever airport to Jackson, Megawati Evers International Airport. And so if you took the general aviation activity that is associated with or tied to Hawkins Field, and you place that on top of the activity that is at Jackson, Megawati Evers International Airport, it'd be a pretty busy place, and the air carriers might not be as happy.
Right.
Certainly the general aviation attendants you have to wait for their carrier activity to pass would not be as happy, and so there's sort of a symbiotic relationship between those two, wherein they kind of balance one another. So most of the general aviation activity is taking place at Hawkins. It used to be a place where there was commercial service out of that airport many years ago. There isn't anymore. But now, it's primarily general aviation. And general aviation, covers a broad spectrum of activity.
And a lot of people also don't know the value of Hawkins Field because they don't fly in and out. The general population doesn't. But with the industrial park right behind it, you have a railroad going through it, and you have an airport. Businesses run their entire freight shipping operation right out of the combination of Hawkins Field, the rail freight line, the industrial park, and the interstates between I-50, I-55, and I-20 and 220. That proximity of Hawkins Field allows for businesses, that to be a very attractive area for businesses located, and that's how we're using that to bring more businesses. And talk a little about how that symbiotic relationship between the railroad, the industrial park, and the interstate system.
Yeah, one of the great selling points that we have for Hawkins Field is its location.
Right.
So location, is what people look for, in terms of real estate. And so, as you mentioned, that airport is at the confluence of Interstate 20, Interstate 220, Highway 49. You mentioned the railroad system that is there, all in close proximity. And then just to the east, not too far away, you have a lot of the medical activity that is taking place.
Correct.
And so a lot of the hospitals, have flight operations that they can service, on their own, but they tend to use, Hawkins Field as backup, and also as places where they can go to meet other aircraft.
Correct.
To conduct the activities that they need to undertake in order to support the hospital operation. So that airport is really well situated. We're going to be working over the next several years, over the next 5-year period, to make it an even better facility.
That's right.
And so we are just about to finish, the commissioners and the airport staff are working very hard to finish up our strategic plan. And strategically, Hawkins Field is right in the mix, and a place that we want to really, really make sure that the citizens of Jackson and the region are really proud of. So we're going to be working towards doing that.
Okay, so now we've set the stage a little bit to give people, the people the scope of the airport. And again, if those listeners who just tuned in, we're speaking with Mr. Carl Newman, the CEO of the Jackson Medgar Wiley Evers Airport and System. So talk a little bit about the finances. Tell the people about the solvency. You know, the airport's making money. Is it having any kind of financial trouble or anything like? I know these answers, but I'd rather hear from you.
Well, our airport system is in very strong financial condition. We generate, somewhere between $17 and $18 million a year in revenue, gross revenue. We spend around $14-15 million a year, in expenses. And so you can see there's a nice surplus, at the end of each year.
And that has not always been the case.
Not always.
No,
Yes,
it hasn't always been the case, but now we're at a point where we are netting roughly $2.5 million a year.
Normally, $2.5-3 million a year of net revenue that we have to then turn around and reinvest into the facilities. And so, the airport system doesn't exist, solely, for the purpose of making money. It exists first and foremost to provide a service to the citizens and the traveling public that have to use the airport. And so those surplus revenues over time build up. We turn around and either use that money to build new facilities and invest in facilities, or we will turn around and borrow money over time and use some of those surplus revenues to pay off the bonds that are associated with it. So, again, a great economic engine for the community. Councilman, there are several thousand employees that come to work each and every day at our airport, and all of them, I'm sure, look forward to receiving that paycheck, every week or every couple of weeks. I know I do. And if that airport wasn't there, first and foremost, the citizens of the city and of this region would not have a place, to go to get from point A to point B. They would have less of an opportunity to get goods and services, into the region. And certainly, and I know this from experience, the difference between cities that do well and those that do not.
That's right.
Are those that have a facility like ours.
That's right.
And so we're very, very fortunate to have a facility like this and need to do all that we can to support it.
So, and I'm glad you brought that financial picture into clarity for the people to hear that, because it's out there that Jackson doesn't run things properly or doesn't have the ability or the capacity to operate things, or there's even some rumor going that black people can't run a government. And I believe that in this instance we're proving that not to be true.
I believe that to be absolutely the case.
Right.
This is the airport. In a sense, is a business.
That's right.
We're not here, again, to make our profit.
Right.
But we do, want to make sure that there are surplus revenues available, to do the things that we need to do with the facility, and we do a great job of that. I can tell you that our Board of Commissioners and our airport staff are so focused on making sure that we have a facility that is financially solvent, more than financially solvent. We want to make sure that we do things so that we are able to fund today, and we also want to fund tomorrow. And so in the terms of funding tomorrow, this year alone, we have about $25 million in outstanding bonds. So before this board, came on board, and before I came on board, we have about $25 million worth of bonds, that were outstanding out there. We were able to turn around and refinance those bonds, or 2005 bonds.
And saved us how much money?
We saved, we're going to be saving more than $4 million over the course of the remaining life of those bonds. So
And
that doesn't happen by happenstance.
it's hard work.
Purpose. Yes,
It's diligent. It's more than just these surface conversations that people are involved in, where they just kind of hit the sound bites. It takes okay, I need to know all the pieces to this machine so well where I could not just extract revenue from it, but I can do it surgically so that it still functions properly. So you have to know everybody from the security guard to the toilet paper, to the jet fuel, to the lights, to the systems, to the different airlines, to the layers of government, both federal, state, and city. You have to understand how all these pieces work in order to produce savings. You just don't cut a budget, or you just don't delete something from a line item without an understanding of how the intricacies of it work.
Right.
And, when we came aboard 2 years ago, the first thing we did was reappoint new members to the airport board. And that started a shift in mindset and culture and in business operations.
Yes, sir.
For the better, I believe. And what we're seeing now is evidence of that, because there wasn't legislation written before. There's legislation written now because now this thing is humming. This machine is a well-oiled and intricately tuned machine that's rolling and has a great trajectory and great leadership from what I can see from the inside and from the outside.
Yes, sir.
So
I can tell you, Councilman, that there is not a decision that we make, in terms of spending money or not spending money, we don't take a look at, so what kind of impact is that going to have on the system?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to make us better?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to make us worse?
Mm-hmm.
We always want to do something that is going to make us better, and so if there isn't, great benefit, to expending a dollar, then we're not going to expend it.
Mm-hmm. So let me go back a little bit further to give some people the history of the airport. So the city purchased the land, right at 50.
Oh, it's been a good while ago.
Right.
I believe it was like in 1958 when the airport
Right.
authority was formed, and so the city purchased land probably, a number of years before that in order to get things squared away.
Okay. And Hawkins Field was purchased in 1928.
That's correct, sir.
So this system has been around for quite a long time.
It has.
And it's been, through, as all businesses, it has its ups and downs. If you've been operating the system since 1928 at Hawkins Field and expanded to the other location in the late 50s, you've had your ups and downs. You've had your good years and bad years. But now we're seeing the light in some areas. And now there's been an overture. This is not a new conversation. I've been hearing about this airport conversation for a few years now. And so it's not a new conversation about different levels of government wanting control, or different geographic areas wanting to control parts of the airport for different reasons. There's several pieces of property that are adjacent to the airport that the city also owns that are amenable to some development. When you come down Lakeland Drive, there's a portion of Lakeland Drive that's not developed. Well, that's because that's the city of Jackson. You see businesses on both sides of Lakeland Drive going all the way down, but then there's one patch, right, that's not developed for a good distance, and that's because it's the city of Jackson.
Not yet.
It's not developed yet.
Right.
Right. And now there are some serious moves being made to develop this property, to put good sustainable businesses and operations there, and infrastructure there. And also there's a road going from Lakeland Drive or 25 that stops in the airport owns, the city owns about one half of it, and they want to bring it around to I-20, or connect it so that it connects to I-20. But the city owns the property in the middle of it.
It's called the East Metro Corridor.
Right.
And a good portion of what is the East Metro Corridor is on airport land.
That's right.
So the airport has donated land to make that roadway system happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in March of this year, 2016, I should say, March of 2016, going to be undertaking a project along with the rest of the East Metro Corridor Commission members to extend that roadway all the way down to Old Brandon Road.
Correct.
And so when that happens, we'll have access to airport land
Mm-hmm.
from both the north and the south.
Mm-hmm.
And it is our intention to go out and vigorously work to make sure that we get that land under production and drive economic activity.
So you'll be able to drive from I-20 all the way over to Lakeland Drive
Eventually,
eventually.
And so
On both sides of the airport, because right now you can do it on the left,
on the west side.
on the west side.
Right.
But now with this new development, or the new infrastructure being put in place, the developments that will come will be able to do it on the east side.
On the east side as well.
Right.
And so again, with this next phase, we're going to be able to get down to is to Old Brandon Road.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be another phase of development that the airport is not necessarily involved in that will take that roadway system down all the way to Interstate 20.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be a great benefit, certainly for the communities that are out there, but it's going to be a great benefit also to the airport and the airport system.
Because most airports in other cities, they have hotels, they have different things right adjacent to it, so people can just come and stay and get back on the plane and leave. And that's where we're going.
That is where we're headed.
We're headed in the direction that people have been begging for. What are you doing? What are you doing with the airport? What are you doing with all your different assets? And we've taken an inventory of all the assets that the city has and see what can we build around, what can we do to grow our tax base and move the city forward. And, first you have to do all the stuff behind the scenes. You have to get the board together, and you have to find the people to serve on the board, and you have to get those people under the right mindset and trained in the right direction. And then they have to turn around, or they had to turn around and say, okay, well, who will be the man and family to bring into this family that fits, that gels? So we have made those ground foundational steps. And then at the same time, how do you get the finances in order so you can be conducive to even making all this happen? The next question I'm going to ask you, again, I know the answer, but tell the people, how much money does the city of Jackson give to the airport every year?
Give to the airport every year?
Mm-hmm. To run, so that the airport can run. Like for the police department, we pay $25 million for the police department. We pay about $22.5 million for the fire department to operate. How much money does the city of Jackson put into the airport every year?
Well, the airport is a great asset for the city of Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
and the city of Jackson doesn't have to contribute 1 red cent. The airport is completely self-sustaining.
So we've gotten the airport to a point where it's now self-sustaining, where it requires no contribution. Not like the zoo where we put in $200,000 a year, or not like, our Memorial Hall or other things like that.
Yeah.
The airport is now finally to a point where we've decreased the debt load and we've saved, they said $4 million from restructuring some debt and doing some other operational changes that have given us more functionality and more efficiencies in several different areas. And now the airport's to a point where the city is not contributing anything.
The city doesn't contribute 1 red cent to the airport.
Right.
It is completely self-sustaining, and that's great from a financial standpoint.
Right. So now from an auditor standpoint, or the inspectors or the bond raters or all those people that look at this, there's some eyes being opened up about the possibilities of the airport. So let's talk a little bit about the thing that's got everybody all in a flux about now the state won't. I want to paint a picture for the people so they can see why. And I want to elevate the conversation from a black-white conversation, from a Democrat-Republican conversation, to a green conversation,
yes, sir,
or an asset conversation. So talk about what we're facing now with this new, not new, but new to the people situation.
Well, I think there has been mention anyway that the state of Mississippi may want to set up a new authority
Mm-hmm.
to run the airport.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen any legislation or anything associated with it, but that is the talk that is out there, and something that has gotten a lot of attention over the last day or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's been on our radar for, like I said, for some time,
Yes, sir.
and we've been dealing with it, covertly, because sometimes you don't want to just be out in the public dealing with stuff. And now that it is, we'll see how far different levels of government want to go with this. Because I can say if I was at a different level of government, I saw a different asset, and you could see how you could take control of some things, that might be something that you would look at.
All right.
But so talk about the feasibility of that even happening. Like what are some of the hurdles that would have to be crossed for the state government to take over an airport? This is not like a school. I don't believe states should be taking over schools in the first place, but talk about that.
Well, there are a lot of hurdles, that are out there and in place, and so probably the most significant is the fact that the city of Jackson owns the land that the airports sit on.
Correct.
And so I would see it being a very difficult situation in order getting over that hurdle. The governance structure that we have right now works.
It's proof that it works.
It's proof that it works.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that our board of commissioners, led by Chairman Pridgeon, has been nothing but supportive of the types of things that we need to do in order to make sure that this airport continues to run and function properly. They've been very supportive of the foundation that we've laid over the last year. And so I mentioned a little bit earlier that Ms. Frazier is with us now. But since I've been on board, we've hired a brand new chief operating officer. His name is Perry Miller. Stole Mr. Miller from the Houston airport system as well.
Okay.
We have a brand new capital development person on board. Her name is Mina Nieto. Brought Ms. Nieto over from the West Coast. She was with San Jose, prior to coming on board with us.
So people are coming from around the country to work in the airport system that we have here in Jackson because of the opportunity.
They see the opportunity, and they see that we are poised to do great things. And they want to be part of something, building something that is great. And so, as good as the airport system is today, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, you're going to see it be even better.
Exactly. So, so the overture of forming a new governing body. So right now, talk about the present governing body and what you may have heard may be proposed.
So I think what I've heard being proposed would be a new governing body or authority that would have 7 members. There are currently 5 members on our board of commissioners. So the new commission would be composed of 7 members. It would be 2 from Hinds County, 2 perhaps from Madison County, 2 from Rankin County, and 1 at large.